Hello, everyone, and welcome to another week of Wake Up Call. It's great to be here with all of you. Well, it's been an interesting week for me. I do have a little bit of a cold, so if I lose my voice at any point, I apologize in advance. But I've been challenging my own beliefs. Sometimes I get a kick out of, okay, I believe in this very strongly. Let's just see what others have to say who I respect and agree with on other things, but we disagree on this one area. And let me just dive into what they think deeply. And so I've been doing that with the work of John Lamb Lash. He is a Gnostic scholar. I'm sure most of you are familiar with his work. But he's very critical of David Icke's theory on the simulation. And if you've been following my work, I feel like I always say that in every episode. If you've been following my work, you'll know I've talked about my own experiences where I feel like there's proof that there is a simulation that we're living within. But I'm open to being wrong. And so I've spent countless hours this week, in the morning before my kids are up or when they're asleep. Whenever I can squeeze it in, I've been diving into John Lash's work and trying to figure out, if he's maybe right on we're not living in a simulation. And to be honest, my beliefs are unchanged. I still feel we are absolutely living in something that is at least like a simulation. But there's so much to be learned from his work, and I kind of wanted to spend this episode talking about what I see in the future based off of some of my recent analyses. What's the word? Sometimes my Philadelphia side comes out, and I don't even know what word I'm looking for. I try to sound well-spoken, but sometimes I'm just not. And combining what David has said for so long and combining what John is saying, because I do feel like David's Gnostic interpretation can be a little bit doom and gloom, even though there is so much truth within it. And John's is a little bit too Mother Earth woo-woo, earthbound desires and it's a little too Mother Earth for me, but there's so much to be learned through his work. And then I could get on the topic of Rudolf Steiner, who I've talked about at length, and Ahriman versus Lucifer, and how the more satanic-like deity, who is Ahriman, is very connected to earthly desires, material realm, all that stuff. And that's sort of where, if you're falling somewhere in the middle of John Lamb Lash's work and David Icke's work, which I do fall somewhere in the middle, and it's a controversial take, but I'm doing my own thing now. I can say whatever I want, and I'm sure that both of them, I don't know, maybe they'll appreciate me talking about this. Maybe they won't appreciate it at all, because it's basically blending both of their philosophies together. But I talk about Rudolf Steiner and Ahriman versus Lucifer, and I would say that John's take is definitely more of the Ahrimanic take, in that he is more connected to the earth and believes that we shouldn't be looking to escape this realm, but healing it and integrating with it, which I understand, but I also think that this realm is flawed. And then when you look at David's take, it's more of, hey, the goal is to get out of here. It's not to stay forever. And I think that that's true. I do believe that as well. But I also believe that we chose to come here and we have work to be done and we can't put the cart before the horse. And if you want to transcend this realm, then you have to first transmute. So what we're going to be doing on this episode is blending the work of John Lamb Lash and David Icke together, because I do fall somewhere in the middle, and also talking about this concept of panspermia, because I was listening to literally 30, 40 hours of John's work this past week, and he talked about panspermia and how that's how the Aeons create all of these life forms on Earth and all of these species of animals. And that's one thing that I feel like in the spiritual community we don't talk enough about, is like, okay, yes, we might not believe in the scientific theory of evolution completely, but at the same time, when we talk about the Anunnaki and the fallen and them coming down from space and from spacecraft, something doesn't really fully hit home with me about that either. And this idea, I'm not sure if you guys are familiar with it, but panspermia is the idea that life, or the chemical building blocks of life, may exist throughout the universe and can spread between planets, moons, or even star systems. Now, this really resonated with me, and I don't even remember what video it was that John was talking about the panspermia concept, but after listening to him for hours and hours and hours and learning some new things, nothing really struck me as like, oh, that's groundbreaking and I'm going to gather these pieces and run with it. Like, it was like hours and hours and hours and hours and hours looking for my theory of the simulation to be eradicated. I was looking for that. Didn't happen, but this panspermia idea did. And he often interprets ancient Gnosticism through a cosmological, a mythio-poetic lens rather than a strictly theological one. And in that framework, there are interesting symbolic parallels between directed panspermia, which we'll get into the definition of that, and the Gnostic idea of the Aeons participating in the emergence of life on Earth. So when we see these ancient images of like a being inside of a star, I'll look and see if I can find it. It's one that comes to mind, but like a being coming in through this UFO looking thing. Well, maybe it's not that. Maybe it's that, yes, a higher form of consciousness wanted to create life in and throughout the universe, and these microorganisms did not evolve in the scientific way that school teaches us. I think it happens way more rapidly and fast, but almost like these higher beings see the potential, they put it out there in the universe, and then they see what happens. And that's how you get all these species of animals. That's how you get all of these races of people. This makes much more sense to me than the Anunnaki landing down in a UFO, manipulating our DNA on Earth. I think that we're all fragments of the cosmos, and he really words it perfectly. And I don't even remember which video I was watching in particular when I started listening to that, and I was like, oh, light bulb, something's going off here. And especially if we're going through this moment in time where we're at the end of a cycle, and I'm not saying that the world's going to end tomorrow or that a cataclysmic event is going to happen tomorrow and the pole shift's happening. You better get ready for it. But when I look at what's happening with the AI agenda in combination with quote unquote Mother Earth, this inorganic layer that is being overtaken. And like David says, I mean, this whole realm might be archonic and inorganic, but then it's like a simulation within a simulation. It still doesn't negate that we, as a species and life in general, finds a way. So if this realm becomes completely fallen in a worst case scenario, chances are, if we want to be physical elsewhere, we can be through this concept of panspermia. So if AI takes over this world, if human procreation ceases the way that it seems like it's going to, and if human 1.0 turns into human 2.0 and human 1.0 keeps their soul, I've talked about it that my theory is the reincarnation process will change because the procreation process will change. So either we will be held in like a holding pattern, a holding realm, a holding facility in the astral or above the astral for a certain period of time until we want to become physical again, until the earth heals itself. Or if we want to experience life, we will experience it elsewhere. So when Elon Musk talks about, oh, we're going to go to Mars, Okay, well, I don't think you get to Mars through space shuttle or through transcending the galaxy in a spacecraft. I think it's more of consciousness reaches a certain point on a certain planet, and then it goes through a cycle. It goes through a cycle of decay. It ceases, it goes somewhere else, and then life on the planet or the realm, however you want to look at it, begins again. So John was talking about panspermia, and I was like, oh, wait, hold on. If this realm becomes totally fallen and it's just archonic AI beings running the show and we sort of slowly die out, we're going to go somewhere else. And whether it's humans sending our seed into the galaxy or universe elsewhere, scientifically on our own, that's debated whether that's even something that we should do, or whether it's something that happens on its own, which I lean more towards. That's the word, like, that's an addition to the worst case scenario that I've been talking about. How would so many species of animals be here? Like, it's not just evolution. It can't be. And it also can't be that this god race of people landed on Earth and just made all living things and control all living things. So I think John is very correct on that. So panspermia suggests that hardy microorganisms, spores, or prebiotic molecules could survive inside meteoroids, on comets, within asteroid fragments, or possibly aboard dust particles. These objects could travel through space and eventually land on a habitable world. Some bacteria on Earth are surprisingly resilient to radiation, vacuum exposure, extreme cold, dehydration, and that resilience is one reason scientists take the idea seriously enough to study. And I've been criticized recently for saying, hey, it's not really looking that great. I think that based off of what's happening with these data centers, and local pushback is happening, but not enough national or global pushback is happening. Time is of the essence, and we really are down to the wire, because if we don't change this now, we're going to be on a trajectory, and that's what it is. And we have to come to peace with that. We can put this information out there and we can try our best, but if we do not succeed in our implementation of spreading information, that's okay. It's all going to work out in the end, and I'm trying to show how it's possibly going to work out in the end. So there are a few different types of panspermia. One is lithopanspermia, and that is life travels inside rocks blasted off by planets and asteroid impacts. So, for example, a large impact hits Mars, rock fragments containing microbes are ejected into space, and some eventually land on Earth. Scientists have actually found Martian meteorites on Earth, so the transport mechanism itself is known to have happened. Then there's radiopanspermia, where tiny spores drift through space propelled by radiation pressures from the stars. Now, for me, directed panspermia seems to make the most sense, and this is where you start to get this idea of Anunnaki messing with our DNA with, normal, modern, scientific evolution kind of mixed in one. And I think that this is what happens during cataclysmic events, whether it be our planet or any other planet, and whether it happen again or not. I'm not wishing that would happen, but when I see these AI data centers being built, I can't help but think, ooh, Mama Earth is not going to be happy about this, and they're just going to keep going up and keep going up, using all of the resources of our planet until it turns into a shithole, basically. I think that this AI agenda and running this archonic force through electricity is just going to deplete the energy of our planet, and I can't see it going in a positive utopia direction unless we get more in tune with nature, which John does talk a lot about. He thinks that most people don't have Gnosticism right, and that this idea of Earth being a fallen realm and it being, evil ultimately, and our bodies being evil. I get everything that he's saying there. He's right in line with what I believe too. But is that the real Gnostic view, or is that his view? I'm not 100% sure, and so we'll be getting there as well. But directed panspermia is where an advanced civilization intentionally seeds life elsewhere. And so when he was talking about this and being critical of Zecharia Sitchin, who I have said I have questions about, he talked about how, it's like the Aeons give these particles to the world, and then life just forms. And I'm like, that makes a lot more sense to me. So how directed panspermia could theoretically work, several hypothetical methods have been proposed. Microbial probes, an advanced civilization launches something carrying bacterial spores, algae, synthetic microbes, DNA libraries. Key. So when we go through these cycles of, there was a cataclysm and a wipeout and the DNA was altered, well, maybe they weren't altering it in a lab on the Earth. Maybe something was happening from another realm, and they put it out there, and it got here. I mean, really. When we talk about the aeons, and how I was saying, John mentioned how the aeons sort of work in compatibility with these theories of panspermia, and how the different races come and how all of the different life forms come. Aeons, just so you're clear, they're divine emanations or aspects of ultimate reality, beings or principles within the higher spiritual realm called the pleroma. And they are structured aspects of consciousness, and they're often kind of portrayed as male or female. Now, they are not planets themselves. They are metaphysical, but they're not astronomical. So they're like the thing that gives the idea of life. And that's what science can explain. So they're divine realities, but not necessarily celestial bodies. Then where the debate comes in is, what are the celestial bodies? Are they controlling us? Are they liberating us? Are they teaching us? Are they keeping us captive in this realm? And this is where David and John's work sort of can be debated, and where I still have so many questions around these theories. But basically, the planetary influence became mechanisms of limitation or control within the archonic influence in Gnostic thought. The question is, for somebody who's like John Lash, who thinks that this world is a divine experiment rather than a prison, well, was it always like that? Was it always like this mechanism through which the planets control our physiological system and the planetary body? Was it always like that? That archonic influence, was it always like that since the beginning of time? Or did it happen? Because John talks about how, the design of Sophia was not an evil experiment. It was a divine experiment, and that the natural world is not evil. And I get that to a certain degree, but at the same time, when you think about things like, I had somebody say, humans are the only species that kill one another. Have you ever looked at the animal world? Have you ever looked at predator and prey? To me, that is indication that David is more right in that thinking of that this is a prison planet. I mean, I personally don't think an all-loving God would make predators like lions or tigers rip other living beings to shred in order to sustain itself. So here's where what I discuss might be a little bit controversial, but if you blend this notion of the Saturn-Moon matrix and how the soul kind of gets mind wiped through the moon and then brought back here into physical through Saturn, and the whole process through the planets, mixed with this idea of directed panspermia that I've discussed, and the Gnostic style cosmology into one speculative framework, then you get the descent of the soul. And it's a multi-layered process where consciousness originates beyond Earth, biological life is seeded here, and incarnation into matter involves entering a controlled or filtered reality system. So, good news, guys. If you want to continue to be physical and this place is going to hell, chances are there will be another place for you to go to. That's what I've discovered in all of this. And if you don't want to be physical, then you probably have an option too. The key is understanding all of this. So in a worst case scenario of what's happening on Earth, I don't think it's going to be as catastrophic as people make it out to be. I think it's more of consciousness is going in all kinds of different directions, and it's cool. That's cool. Okay, so we're going to take it one step at a time. And there's this recurring theme that the soul forgets its origin upon entering life. So with John Lamb Lash, his theories of like Sophia being the Earth Mother and this being a non-fallen realm, well, why does the soul forget? And he might say, well, it's because of archonic influence, but wouldn't you say if that's the way this realm works in order to get here that this is a fallen realm? And these are the conversations that need to be had. And I'm trying to connect with people in the Gnostic world who feel like they've been shunned by the simulation theory people. I'm willing to talk to them. I'm willing to come to a middle ground if we can. And I just have a problem with the forgetfulness aspect of all of this. Like, why have we been mind wiped? When I really go into a state of awareness, and I barely ever remember my dreams, which is kind of unfortunate. But when I do, it's often on other planets, and I know that I'm not on Earth. So how can you explain that? I mean, why do we forget all of this? This amnesia is completely unfair, and if you don't believe in the simulation, why does this happen? And how do you see us getting out of that other than transcending? I mean, not to go into this Luciferian, we need to escapism, but how do you see us bypassing this in a synchristic, organic way? Because I don't see that happening other than leaving this place. I don't, unless we leave this place temporarily until it's fixed. Here's where I specifically resonate with David. He's a dot connector like me. I mean, he can see patterns, whereas when I look at Lash's tone, I'm like, he's not necessarily a dot connector. He's pulling from historical references and making his own conclusions, and his own conclusions seem to be like, his intuition does seem to be on point, but he's not pulling from so many different things on the planet and experiences where he's getting to these conclusions, though he does compare mythology, which I really like. But yeah, David definitely is a pattern recognizer the way that I am. And I think that John is great with comparative mythology, and he takes all of the historical schools of thought and kind of pulls from the best of them, whereas David sees pattern in modern times. And both of their views on Gnosticism are incredibly important. And I think, just like everything, the truth is somewhere in the gray area, and I might be condemned to say this about them. One thing I do agree a little bit more with John Lamb Lash's work is that the archonic force is not strictly evil. It's more parasitic than evil. It's that it feeds off of our energy rather than just purely intending for our reality to be evil and for us to carry out evil deeds. I think that is what's happening. And I also have this theory of, if human 1.0 turns into human 2.0 and the AI agenda fully takes over human 2.0's consciousness, that they will ultimately become archonic themselves. I think that that's what will eventually happen, that life will seed itself again here, and they will be stuck in the cloud watching us play out life again. Maybe not me, because I I don't know. I don't know if I want to come back, but these are all theoretical things. So, with everything that I've talked about so far, what we have to realize is no matter what is going to unfold, and no matter what humanity decides, we participate in a larger cosmic evolutionary process, and intelligence permeates the universe, and life is not isolated to Earth. Okay, so I think that's something that most of us can agree on. And this is different than aliens engineered humanity. It's more of we're conscious life, deeply interconnected on cosmic scales. And I like this theory better than the Anunnaki gods fell through into the earth, and then we were like, and they took our DNA and manipulated it. I think that's something before that.
I've told you we don't know.
So you have no idea how it started?
No, nor has anybody.
Nor has anyone else. What do you think is the possibility that intelligent design might turn out to be the answer to some issues in genetics or in evolution?
It could come about in the following way. It could be that at some earlier time, somewhere in the universe, a civilization evolved by probably some kind of Darwinian means to a very, very high level of technology, and designed a form of life that they seeded onto perhaps this planet. Now, that is a possibility, and an intriguing possibility. And I suppose it's possible that you might find evidence for that if you look at the details of biochemistry, molecular biology. You might find a signature of some sort of designer.
Wait a second. Richard Dawkins thought intelligent design might be a legitimate pursuit?
And that designer could well be a higher intelligence from elsewhere in the universe. Well, but that higher intelligence would itself have had to have come about by some explicable or ultimately explicable process. It couldn't have just jumped into existence spontaneously. That's the point.
So Professor Dawkins was not against intelligent design, just certain types of designers, such as God.
John Lash, he believes simulation theory is an archonic worldview because it reduces reality to machinery, and it treats consciousness as computational and replaces living cosmos with artificial abstraction. So basically, he believes simulation theory is unconsciously mirroring the very mindset Gnosticism warned against. And that's where this conversation gets really interesting, and the only way to know is to have a conversation with him or with other people in his circle, which I am working on doing, because I feel like these should be fun, lighthearted conversations that everybody's willing to change their opinions on if they see something that is worth shifting their worldview on. Again, so far, I still believe in simulation theory, but I do get that John Lash sees reality as something a little bit more organic rather than just machinery. I think that it's a middle ground. I think that we kind of do operate like machines with the archonic influence, but we become more godlike when we are further away from that, which is the whole point of the AI agenda. And if we don't stop that, then what's going to happen? And that's where my theories come in. So I've explained in some of my work that I had my eyes opened when I was on the show Big Brother on CBS with the all-seeing eye. And I really felt like that experience kind of was a microcosm of the macrocosm, and that through that simulation, I was not able to talk to the outside world. I was not able to communicate with loved ones. I had production manipulation happening, distorting my view on what was going on around me. But that doesn't negate from the fact that there was another real world happening outside of that ecosystem. And so I feel like production manipulation was the Archons. I feel like casting was sort of the Archons too, of like getting me to come into that scenario. And because I had no idea what was going on in the outside world when I was in that experience, because you can't write, you can't make phone calls, you can't do anything. It's actually worse than jail. It's actually worse than jail. From a psychological standpoint. And it's almost like when David talks about a narrow band of frequency and only being able to see so much, that's what was happening to me in that process. Plus, you're being watched 24/7 by watchers. You can't see any of the camera people, nothing, but they're watching you. And when these humans watch reality TV, they're feeding on low vibrational energy. So everybody's acting archonic. And it really does, when you get out of that experience, it feels like you're getting out of jail. So if a reality is sort of like Big Brother, then even if you are optimistic and you don't fully view this world as evil, the human soul is meant to be free at the end of the day. And I think that in order to rise above this realm, we have to come to grips with our purpose here and fully carry that out. So I think that both David and somebody like John are completely right. They're not wrong. Neither one's wrong. But the truth is always in the gray. So that's this episode. And I appreciate you for sticking around this long. Thanks, and I'll see you guys soon.